So we talked we talked about modules the other day, but now let's look at how you do the modules in Flowgorithm.
So we're actually opening Flowgorithm up.
So I'm going in Flowgorithm
Okay.
so that I've got it open up here on the board. Couple of things that will not do is where in the chapter they talked about global variables, where you declare a variable that applied to all the modules. You can't do that in Flowgorithm.
Okay.
Or if there is a way, I haven't figured it out, but based on what all I found and everything I tried on there, there's no way to do global variables. Likewise, where it had reference variables, which also applied across on it, and that you could declare it as a reference variable, and then it worked on into the modules, so it was basically a global variable also, that those won't work in here either. So you're only going to be able to carry values over to the module and back from the module, and that the module is going to be independent. Now, for their purposes, they're going to call it a function, not a module. And we're going to do functions later in the book, but functions here are going to serve both as modules and functions, so it can serve as a module. So they've made that. So there's an add function button, or which will actually create your function over here. The call box is going to be like you've had. So we put a call box in just like we've been doing with boxes. Choose the spot where the call goes, choose a call box, and then double click on it, and you can put the name of the module, in which case you'll have nothing put parentheses after it. So if I was going to call this module, we'll call it Dwight. I just put that there, hit enter, and it calls Dwight. If it was a function, which like I say is later in the book, it uses parentheses. Okay, so there really are similar things that so they've put it all together. As far as building the function itself, you could hit the add function button here, or you can go to the program and do add function from there. Both do the same thing. So whether you want to use a button or use the menu. It's then going to come up, it's going to ask you for the function name. You're going to have to name what you're going to call the function. Obviously that's the name in the call statement. Now you can have a number of function, actually modules, but it's a function for their purpose. So I will name my module here, which I'm calling function. So I'll call it Dwight, like I just said I was going to call on the other. I don't have anything to do with parameters, so I don't have to worry about that one. And for what they've shown, and that actually we would need a return type of the value that we want to return on it. That's going to come back from the module that you would list here. The interesting one is, I guess we can only return one value. I'm going to use K because it's a function, so it would return just one value, a module. Well, with a module, you can actually have multiple values going back on it. Look at something real quick on how they did on what they had you. Because when they had you passing values, because they passed values into it, which you can do up there when you created it. It's not going to let us do the reference back on it, so you're going to return Because with the module, they really don't have you, they're doing the reference to do it on there. Let me try something right here. Where did that go to? Oh. And you're only going to have one of them showing on screen at a time, where there's a drop-down box there where main's been showing. It will show your modules below, and you can flip back and forth between your items from there. So I can go to main or Dwight. So if I'm bringing in values, I can tell it which ones I'm bringing in there, and I can bring in multiple values. But I can only return one value out of it because it's a function type approach. Where with real modules you can actually pass back more information. So with like their example on page 107 of where they're passing values to it, we could have brought in a value, and where they brought in a value there that they called value, so we could call it value, and that it was going to be an integer number, and so I could bring in send across one value, but now it's going to throw me an error here. No, because I'm not doing the call. Okay, so I've brought in something called value, which I've declared at this point. Okay, so it's doing the declare there. We could change the value of value. I don't like value as the name. Let's go with something else. Hours. Let's go back to main. It would be nice if they would show these on the same page for us. We can do the call. Well, if you put the name of it in here, it needs to be declared before then and a value assigned to it before you do that. Because if we actually put it in here, and we're just going to go with the same name, because that is really my suggestion, is try to stay similar names, unless you got to change names back and forth across on it. So I'll click OK. And if I went to run it, it's going to flip me an error. Because it says, wait a minute, you're saying about hours right here? I don't know anything about hours. So I've got to declare hours above there. So I've made an integer consistently through here, and I've got to set it a value there too, or it's not going to be happy either, even though I really am looking that I'm going to get the value from over in here, because I'm passing a value to it, so I do have to have a value to it. So let's make it 30. You worked 30 hours this week. We're passing hours over to Dwight, and then we're going to use Dwight to figure out how much pay you're getting, because everybody gets paid the same thing at the my company. So now I know what hours is. The rate, I'm going to pay everybody $15 an hour. So pay, and I'm going to change that return statement in just a second, is equal to hours times 15. And I suspect it's going to throw me an error on that. No, what's happened? I change this to returning pay. I clicked the wrong one. Oh, there it is. Okay. Pay is what I'm going to return, and I'm integering it, which I really shouldn't be if I was really doing this. And so now, if I go back to the main, I'm going to have to declare pay also, because I can't do anything with it, but I'm going to return the value on it, so it's going to bring the value back in for that point. So I can declare pay. I'm going to let it sit as an integer. Like I said, it's not really what I want it, but that's okay. And then I'm going to output. This thing makes you click more than I really want it to make me click. So when I create the box, it ought to go on into letting me input stuff in the box instead of having to then turn around and click the box to input stuff into it. Now if we run it, it's not happy with pay right there, I think. No, it's not happy with pay here because I forgot to declare it over here. Duh. Y'all didn't point that one out to me. Did they not point out to you that y'all are paying to tell me what I do wrong?
No, they didn't say nothing about that.
Okay. So I got to declare pay in here because it's got to exist in the module and I hadn't declared it, remember, okay? And now I've declared it, so let's go back to main now so that we can run it again. Read data from a variable before anything was input into it. It returned it. Should have returned that to there. Why did it not return it? Return integer pay. It should have returned the value. That's strange. Why didn't it return the value? I didn't mean to hit save. I've created it. I don't want to put anything into it. I'm going to go ahead and assign a 0 here and just see what happens. Because we'll know if it picked up the correct value or not. It did not carry it across. It should have carried it across. But we told it to return pay to here. That's what we passed to it. And when it returns, it should have returned a value to here for us for pay. Return integer pay. I didn't exactly have any choice. The return variable is pay. So I was returning the value I calculated in here. Let's see, there's the variable watch somewhere. Variable watch. Let's why did it not give me a variable watch? It should have given me what those variables were right now. If we don't return anything, it'll work fine. But you really need, with modules and functions, need to be returning values. Okay? So that's your really big. Sometimes you've got modules, and like the one that they were mentioning about where they split stuff all up, they had something, because sometimes you don't return a value, you just pass values over to it. Let's go into here and let's do this. Let's make sure it really is passing hours over to here. So I'm going to have output hours. So it did pass it over to the module. That's not returning. Return integer pay, pay. But it's not returning the value. Return type's integer, the return variable is okay. So, what this is going to mean for the meantime is you're going to have to draw the flow chart. You're going to have to do the flow charts, and you can do them flow-rhythm, you just won't be able to test them. Okay? Does everybody follow on that part? That if it's one that returns a value, you're going to have to put the return and treat it on as if it's been returned correctly across to there. But it's not going to return the value, so it's not going to run stuff correctly for us. But it'll be logically set up correctly. And this is what I was told didn't run on here, was that it didn't return values correctly. I was told from module to module, but obviously it's doing it from module to main, which is actually a module anyway, if you notice. It's just a main module, and it's called main module. But for some reason, it does not like to return that, and their documentation, as we saw in here the other day, is pitiful. It's hardly anything. But for a free program, I guess you really can't complain. And documentation is the last thing people do. Because we're calling it with hours, we're returning pay. We've got pay described. So if we return it, actually functions normally on the call to a function. It would actually return it as Dwight. Let's try that. That may be where I've got this wrong. Let's output Dwight. Dwight's not declared, but Dwight is the name of the function, which is what it normally returns the value in. Except I think I have to put a parentheses after it. Trying to think back in terms of coding in certain languages, how it does it, and see if this gets happy with that. Number of arguments must match. Aha! The parameters of the function. So it's wanting to call a function with that. Let's see what this does. We'll just make the function as that. I'll run that after I close the previous run. Aha! You're going to have to bring it across as a function. So, you're not going to use the call statement on it like you should be calling a module. Which is weird. Why have they got the call sitting in here if it doesn't work to bring anything back? That we're actually doing the call. I actually did the call in the output statement right here. Because it's calling the function Dwight and passing hours over to it. And it's bringing the value back as that function. Because you notice there I got the 450. Because 30 was what we put in here. We checked it over in the module that we had it output the hours over there just to see if they passed over, so that was the second 30. And then the third number here was the multiplication done in the module, but we didn't output it in the module, remember? And so it did the output here on the output line, but it's got function name instead of a module. So looks like we're having to do it as if it really is a function, but yet that is supposed to be calling. Close that so we can get the pop-ups. That's supposed to be calling a function. That's creating a function. And that was the call box. Should be calling, because really that's how a module is supposed to work, is that should be calling a module, but it's not calling. It does call a module for us, but it doesn't ever let us pass anything back from the module, which is weird. So that's really there. Let me go back to Dwight again. Let's see if I've done anything. I told it to return the value. integer pay, which it picked that up. If I had just had a return there, it would not have returned anything on the function. That's returning that value off the function. Because on the return, you tell it whatever value you take back is what it called it is. However, on a module, you should be able to pass back a number of values that then pass back into there. I don't think this thing lets us, it just lets us put the ones that are passing into there, not what it's returning. So you're going to have to use functions to do them, and you're going to have to work it like a function when you actually, if you're bringing a value, you can only bring one value back. But if you'll put that on the return and then use, when you call the function. Now, if you want it to use that value that came back multiple times down there, what you could do, instead of having output Dwight parentheses hours, instead of that call statement there, we could have done an assign statement there. And we could put there pay equals Dwight parentheses whatever I'm returning it is, well, whatever I'm sending it across as, hours is what I'm sending across as, hours goes there. And put that, then in my output statement, I could just, whoops, click the wrong spot there. Instead of putting Dwight hours, I could just put pay right there. And now this should work perfectly fine for us because we've got it in the pay variable now, because pay variable is assigned the value of what the function did. And so if I do a run, it works. So effectively, this call to it does not do anything because we're redoing the call again right here. Everybody follow on that? But this is the way you're supposed to do it, of using the call box and call the module when you're doing a module, whereas a function is normally done as a variable or in a list of things. List it there, not as a call statement to it, although they've mixed up modules and functions for some reason in here. So when y'all draw the flowcharts, when y'all, now I'm saying drawing, you're drawing them in Photorhythm. When you do the flowchart, do them up correctly, like they've shown you. Of do this one, and don't bother with this box here. But if you want it to get the thing, and return back whatever values you want to return back, tell it on that, okay? And then output or do further calculations like you're supposed to. But if you go to do a run, you're going to get errors. And I know that. So I will be looking for your actual regular logic, like when people, prior to this class, when I taught the class, when I had to go sit there and read the flowchart and figure it all out anyway, I'm going to have to do that with modules. Read it all through and make sure you got it all written correctly. For this chapter, since this is the first time we're doing on the modules, and you got all these crazy parts on it, if you don't have it right, I'm going to send you back notes on it and tell you what to fix. And then tell you to fix it and send it back to me again. And that's even if you don't get it turned in until the deadline, or if I don't grade it until, I think these are due Monday if I remember right, aren't they?
I thought these had 2 weeks on.
Our module's not due to they're not due till the 20th. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think you said this was a 2-week.
Yep, they're not due till the 20th. I will go ahead and try to grade these along the way as y'all turn them in. But even if it gets to the 20th, as long as you have turned it in at least one time, and then I've got fix on it, and then you need to turn it in again. If it is any assignment, I've got fix on it, and it's up to the deadline, that you're not going to get penalized when you turn it back in with fix on it after the deadline right there, as long as you turned it in within, if I turned it back on the deadline day, as long as you turn it back in within a day or two afterwards. Don't wait a week or two on that. The other part is, I will mention to you, if it's something where you've had problems on doing some assignment, and you've written me, and we're writing back and forth trying to fix on it, and right up there to the day before or the day, and then I'm helping you back and forth trying to figure out how to get around on something, and then you end up, because of that, having turned in a day or two late, I'm not penalizing on those either. So everybody follow on that part? So it's when you should have gotten it done, you get the penalty. But if you're working with me, now writing and telling me that that you've been working with Todd on getting it figured out isn't going to do the job. It's going to be when you've written me about what your problem is and getting me helping you back and forth on it. Okay? Or it doesn't work for you, Todd, either on getting help from him or someone else. That's nice, okay? But that's not going to get you an extension on it. Where working with me, if I can't get it right off on telling you what to do on it, and it delays us some. I got one student in one class right now that we're having a problem with that. I'm telling him that don't worry on it, that I'll take it late on him with no penalty because something's not working right. And here, I'm going to still dig further into this, and next week we can dig into this since we still got next week to work on this. And hopefully, maybe we can get modules to work on this and find out what it is, because I know good and well they've got that they should have modules out there working on it. They might not have had very first thing when they came out with the product, but because that would have been an add-on to it of not doing as a very first things that they created with it. But at this point, as long as they've had the product out there now, modules should be in there because modules are heavily used, and that for modules not working right, there's just something's not right here. We're not seeing something or another. Just like trying to delete a box, we couldn't figure out the other day, and we had to go. Then when I found out, all you gotta do is highlight the box and then click the delete key, and the box will go away. But nowhere in the documentation did they tell you that.
Yeah,
Okay?
they should add that.
Because I looked, because they got just that tutorial out there, which didn't tell you much, but it gave you an introduction to it. It told you where to go get boxes and how to draw that, which worked good for us in chapter 1. But then they really don't have anything describing how to do anything out there very well on it. So, and that I've Googled, and when I've gone out looking, I've Googled on the stuff, like on modules, I've Googled on it, figuring somebody at some school would have something that they'd written directions that explained on it. Because a lot of times I have found that on other programs like this that we use, or have used. And I can find there's other schools using it, but nobody had any additional information that I wanted. So hopefully that all helps y'all today some, that now you've got a better idea, but you can obviously go ahead and design the programs and do it modularized. We just may need to, if we can figure it out, go back in and make some minor little adjustment to get the stuff to work correctly. But if we can't, we'll just do it where we've done it using Fogarithm, automatically drawing it for us, but we're manually doing to see if it works or not. Does everybody follow that part? Okay? Any questions?
Should be good.
Does that make a little more sense to y'all today on what we're doing? As you can see where I'm getting confused on the end of it, but where we can get the module to basically work, but you're really working with functions, and like I say, functions is not until chapter 6. Okay? Modules to me should have been introduced over at that same point. Most books would introduce either modules or functions first, but one of them in one chapter and the other one in the other chapter, and go through. And because with what you've done in chapter 1 and 2 so far in here, when chapter 2 was really the first thing you did anything with flow charting in this book, that you haven't done anything that needs modularizing yet. That they haven't shown you how to write bigger things or anything. So modules doesn't make a whole lot of sense from what you've learned so far, because you're just seeing small things and going, we had a flow chart that consisted of 5 lines to it. Why would we want to break that into modules when it's that small? Okay? So I think they got that a little confused on that. But modularized programming is the way programming is done out there today. And that's why I think they put it up there, as they consider, because everything's done so modularized, that everything's written in modules, that they wanted to introduce the concept to you early. But I think they may have done it a little too early. If I teach this class again, I'm probably move that chapter in out of order and drop it back to with 6. But that's the case of when I get handed this class at the last minute that I didn't have the book until the day before y'all started. That I really couldn't pair on that. I'm going to save this one and post it out there too, so that your other classmates can see what we did draw today, and the online students can see what was drawn in the lecture too, so that will make a little more sense to them when they listen to the lecture of what it was that I was talking about. So, and I can post that right here in this room. So